Just on this announcement that's coming up later on today, so there's going to be an overhaul of weapons firing ranges, lengthening the NT's Bradfield airstrip, new training facilities as well. What's your take on that announcement today?
Thanks, Peter. Look, it's it's part of the rollout from the Defence Strategic Update that was announced mid last year, and it is a significant boost to what we've seen in the past. But what we're also seeing in light of the news over the last few days is that, in fact, it's really not enough. Well, we've got what we did back in the 1980s and 90s was we invested in defence infrastructure across the north of Australia, from Learmonth, Derby, Tyndall, Weipa, right across from WA, northern WA, across to northern Queensland. A lot of that infrastructure is now ageing. And not really robust enough for what the future might hold. So not able to sustain 24-hour operations, particularly in the wet season, or if there's any break in communication. So what we're seeing with these training facilities and the extent of the runway, excellent. It's really good. Timely, it's important to do. The facilities there need to be made more robust, more able to take a greater flow of trainee soldiers, sailors and airmen. But there's more that needs to be done. Across Darwin, the port facilities there need to be made more robust. And as I say, the old airfield infrastructure that was designed back in the 1980s for when we were thinking about defence of Australia back then in a much more benign set of circumstances, really needs to see this be the first step, not the final step, of reinvestment across the north.
John, if the US and China are involved in conflict, we'll inevitably get drawn into that. Where are we at with preparedness? I had Karen Andrews on the show a little bit earlier, and she said we are as prepared as we can be. Do you agree with her?
Look, we are as prepared as we can be when we're thinking about the old paradigm, the paradigm of the unipolar moment when the United States could do almost all of the heavy lifting and we just contributed a niche little force to go attack alongside the United States. The problem is that what we're looking at is a set of circumstances where the United States is actually not in that unipolar moment. It is a much more contested environment, and we are living in a bit of a false sense of security. And let me just put it to you this way, Peter. Back in January 1943, a country of under 8 million had, just in land power terms alone, an army of 14 divisions. Now, a division has about 10,000 troops in it. Today, we have one regular division and one reserve division, and both of them are a bit hollow. So, yes, they're great. They're really honed. They're high tech. They're as good as you can get. They're really, really good, but they're a one-punch force. So we are having ourselves on if we think we are in a position to contribute to a stoush, a major great power contestational stoush, with our one-punch force. As good as it is, and let me just reaffirm the point, the proficiency and the professionalism of the Army, Navy and Air Force is second to none. It's just so small, it's not that hard to push over. And that's the problem. We're just not in a position to think through the implications of a force designed for the peace dividend of the post-Cold War years 30 years ago. And we've talked about regenerating the force, and yes, we've got modern F-35s, and we've got tankers, and we've got great new kit coming. The problem is it's not enough. It doesn't have the range we need. The F-35 range it's designed to help, in Europe and in continental circumstances. We can't fly them far enough with any weapons on board to have any effect offshore. So we actually have to think a new way about the scale of the challenge and the mechanisms we have at our disposal to respond to those challenges.
Okay, so when you had Mike Pizzullo saying the drums of war are beating yesterday, and you had Peter Dutton's comments on the weekend as well, in response to that, China has said overnight that Australia is not that strong, it's not that powerful. If it insists on intervening, it will only cause greater damage to Australia itself. So, I mean, in a sense, has China got a point there?
Look, I think the point is the message is actually for domestic Australian consumption. We need a wake-up call. It's not about, I mean, we know China's already been very coercive and assertive in the way it's operated with its wolf warrior diplomacy and its exercise of sharp power against Korea, Canada, Australia, Norway, Taiwan, Japan, you name it. We're all at the butt end of Chinese sharp power. So we're not Robinson Crusoe in this situation. What we are, though, is underprepared for a spectrum of plausible contingencies that could arise well within the next few years.
Fuel stocks, for instance.
Bingo. Absolutely, Peter. And this is the point about not only fuel stocks around the nation, but fuel stocks at the airfields, the airfield bases across across the north of Australia, in WA, Northern Territory, and Northern Queensland. They're basically not redundant. They're not robust. They don't have resilience to actually sustain operations. And of course, as you point out, across the rest of Australia, particularly across the southeast, we've closed down the Altona refinery. Nothing to see here, folks. We relied overwhelmingly on refined oil coming from South Korea and Singapore. What could possibly disrupt those flows? Well, there's half a dozen very plausible scenarios that could arise at short notice.
All right, John Blaxland, always good to get your thoughts. Really appreciate that.